In your car, you have your briefcase, you say hi to your neighbors, he mows his lawn just like you do, and things keep moving along in the same direction they always have been. That's why marijuana laws exist.
There are, in my opinion, people in government at all levels of government who know that it's not a winnable war, and yet they continue to pursue it.
Acceptance of drug use is simply not an option for this administration.
Often we go to debates and it's a police officer debating us. Okay, the police are supposed to enforce the laws. They should not be arguing for or against laws. That's not their job.
Well, what is their job? Is it to enforce laws that exist on the books, or to determine the policy of the laws that are made?
The way to justify the policy is to create a lot of fear and then spend a lot of money combating that. Quite frankly, if you took the using population of all the other illegal drugs combined and you eliminated cannabis from that equation, there wouldn't be a big enough drug problem in either this country or the United States to justify the massive expenditures that go towards fighting the war.
The amazing thing is the small amount of enforcement that is necessary.
$400 million is spent annually in Canada arresting and prosecuting marijuana crimes. The total budget in Canada for all drugs is $500 million. That means 4/5 of the drug budget goes towards arresting and prosecuting marijuana users, leaving 1/5 for crack, heroin, coke, crystal meth, the date rape drug, whatever.
The drug enforcement industry is big business. It's self-perpetuating. It relies on taxpayer dollars.
And so it's an endless battle that the DEA doesn't win. They participate in.
It's like doing a big budget movie, you know. You get $30 million to do a movie, and then the movie comes out and it doesn't make any money. But someone made $30 million. Every once in a while they'll show a guy, you know, posing beside a big bunch of marijuana, you know, this is the DEA money at work.
It'd be like asking loggers about saving trees, you know what I mean? This is where their mainstay of their cash flow comes from.
The campaign will continue until every available known plot of marijuana has been eradicated.
We've got to live with it, doing the best job we can.
Even if it's a bad job?
We're all carrying a pretty impossible load, Miss Gibson.
There are many, many police officers, however, who believe that it ought to be legalized, regulated, and controlled. They see the hypocrisy between our existing laws relating to alcohol and marijuana in their day-to-day life, shift after shift after shift, and they get it. But they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to lose that promotion to sergeant or the assignment to detectives. They want to be a chief someday, and they don't want to piss off the people in power.
Judges, lawyers, prosecutors, defense lawyers, prison guards, there's all of those people in the criminal justice industry. Are their interests being protected? Well, in a sense, yes, they are. Defense bar, similarly, we make money. The more things they prohibit, the more money we make.
Sorry I'm late, Kent. I was delayed in court.
You still have large numbers of people being busted for simple possession. If you look at the stats, in terms of drug offenses, the largest group are still simple possession of marijuana.
Every time you blow a marijuana cigarette, you take a chance on blowing your future.
Oh, come on, Pop. All my friends smoke pot. They're not criminals.
Only because they haven't been caught yet.
If you do drugs, you will be caught. And when you're caught, you will be punished.
750,000 Americans every year are charged with pot possession. That's nearly 1 million people, and whether you go to jail or not, your life is in serious trouble.
And that number of annual arrests for marijuana now rivals the number of arrests for murder, rape, robbery, and aggravated assault combined.
You will never get over a conviction. A conviction will track you every day for the rest of your life. For instance, do you remember that guy that used to smoke but didn't inhale? Former President Bill Clinton.
This is not a big issue with me. I never even had a drink of whiskey till I was 22.
Now, if Mr. Clinton handed me that marijuana cigarette when he was standing in a circle with us, it wouldn't matter whether he inhaled or not. He would have become a dope dealer, wouldn't he? Just like all those other people that went to jail. Never to be an attorney, much less the President of the United States.
But the marijuana laws protect us. They make our lives safer. They send us the correct moral message.
That's how 19 out of 21 nations have gone down the drain before us. Internal decay. The breakdown of moral, ethical, and religious principles.
If you've been caught, a young person in the U.S., with so much as one marijuana cigarette, you can't get a loan or grant from the government to go to college. If you've been convicted of murdering somebody or raping someone, no problem. You go right down, they'll give you the loan. I guess the message is it's okay to rape and murder and pillage, just don't smoke a joint afterwards.
First thing that John Ashcroft did after 9/11, sent out a strike force to take down the LA Cannabis Buyers Co-op. That really helped national security a great deal.
And what else helps national security? Taking down top criminal targets. In 2003, the U.S. government put aside money to do just that. $25 million for the head of Osama bin Laden, $15 million each for the whereabouts of Uday and Qusay Hussein, Saddam's sons, and a $12 million budget to go after one of the most dangerous men of all, this man. Can you tell us what exactly you were charged with?
I was charged with conspiring to sell paraphernalia.
Operation Pipe Dreams was a brainstorm of Attorney General John Ashcroft.
The internet has been illegally utilized to sell these illegal products and to facilitate large illegal businesses operating in the open.
A sting operation that busted people for selling paraphernalia to a particular county in Pennsylvania where they were willing to prosecute.
Because there's two states, Pennsylvania, Iowa. Void were prohibited. Well, it was prohibited to send it to Pennsylvania and Iowa.
A man like yourself that is, an established actor, comedian, you're not a criminal. Like, why do you think they targeted you?
Well, because our movies were #1 rentals in America. What our movies did was really show the hypocrisy of the pot laws. In fact, when I went to jail, they had it in the transcript that our movies have influenced children for 30 years and will continue to do so forever. Therefore, I should go to jail. You got to remember, they were going into Iraq, and they needed some diversion as far as headlines go. And they equated the billion-dollar paraphernalia business with aiding terrorists. This was a legitimate company paying taxes. I was just the face on the bone. They charged me. I had nothing to do with the company. I never shipped anything to anybody.
It wasn't even his company. He just loaned his name to it. 51 people were arrested under Operation Pipe Dreams. Only one person, Tommy Chong, went to jail.
But if I didn't plead, they threatened my son and my wife.
Tommy stands up and volunteers to go to jail, says, yeah, okay, that's my paraphernalia. You leave my wife and kid alone. He's protecting his family.
What kind of force was used on the day you were arrested?
There's over 20 SWAT team people, visors, automatic weapons, helicopters overhead. They had news trucks, Fox News trucks outside. They had the media on the ready. It was a photo op for everybody. They asked, do I have any drugs? And I said, yeah, I got pot, and they wanted to know where it was, so I told them. They said, well, it's not really a drug bust. I said, well, then what the are you doing in my house, Then they said, it's about bongs. We're bringing down all the bong companies in America.
And with Tommy safely behind bars for 9 months, the United States drug war reset its sights, this time across borders. In downtown Vancouver, just outside the U.S. consulate, a bunch of people had gotten together and were having a rally for this guy named Mark Emery. He had evidently been selling seeds, marijuana seeds, to the wrong people.
Let me tell you, the DEA wants me because I am very good at what I do.
Well, obviously, I'm the most dangerous man alive. Like, really. Like, no wonder I'm facing life imprisonment without parole for something that no one's ever gone to jail for here in Canada. No one's ever gone to jail for seeds, not even for a day.
Mark and 2 of his employees are facing life in prison in the United States. Not Canada, the United States, for selling marijuana seeds over the internet.
Vancouver police came in here with a warrant for an extradition, but we were taken then to North Fraser Correctional Center. Correctional Center of the year 2002. Beautiful facility.
Mark Emery has gotten in the face of the United States.
The U.S. sees Mark Emery as a major political threat to its anti-cannabis agenda.
In a press release from Karen Tandy, head of the DEA, she said that this is not only the end of marijuana trafficking, but it's a blow to the marijuana legalization movement.
I gave just under $4 million away over 11 years to Supreme Court challenges, ballot initiatives, political parties, drug addiction clinics. Well, if you're the DEA, who the hell do you think you're going to go after first and foremost and as viciously as you can do it?
I think they even admitted it themselves when on the day of the raid, the DEA announced, he's a legalizer. We're shutting down one of the biggest legalizers. The legalization movement won't have a pot of money to draw from. Ha 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 ha.
Mark Emery has never gone to America and sold a seed. He does it all from here by mail order. And it's akin to Canadians ordering, a machine gun from somewhere in America. It's against the law, and if we receive it here in Canada, they come and arrest us for receiving the machine gun. They don't go to America and say to Colt, "Hi, we're arresting you because you sent a machine gun to someone in Canada."
No one's been sentenced to any time in jail in the history of Canada in 35 years. We've had this law. 2 people, me and Ian Hunter in Victoria, were fined.
There's all sorts of seed businesses still open. Mark's the only one out of about 50 retail cannabis seed businesses in Canada that's been charged.
Mark has been paying the Canadian federal government taxes on income he has made from selling seeds.
The government relied on the existence of these internet seed sellers so that patients who had qualified for medical marijuana exemptions, who were bugging them for seed, were being directed to these internet seeds, and Mark Emery specifically in some cases is the place to get their seed.
It puts Canada and our government in a very difficult position because they've either got to hand over a Canadian citizen to a foreign government for activities that were entirely done in Canada, for which our own government, our own police are not willing to charge him.
If the Canadian authorities who rubber stamp this shit think that what I've done is so bad, then charge me. I should be tried by a jury of my peers. I'm not about to be tried by my peers at all. I'm about to be tried by foreigners.
At 420, a time synonymous with smoking marijuana, everyone lit up. And for those who didn't have marijuana to light up, again the police were close by, and again they didn't seem to care. One officer had mentioned she was bothered by the smell of the smoke. It was kind of confusing. How could we be sending Mark Emery to prison for life in the United States if even our own police aren't finding it worth their while to bust people smoking it right in front of them? That's not the only thing that's confusing.
The marijuana that's consumed in the United States, how much comes from Canada?
I don't know much about Canada. I don't either.
Maybe 20%?
I'll go with 35.
35%?
And a quarter.
50%. 50? 50%. I would say about 60%. 60%? 70%. Yeah, 70, 80%.
At least 80% of it.
Whew. I don't think it's all that much.
Most of it is here.
We're getting the drug czar saying, BC bud.
This was when some of the people in Canada were trying to get marijuana legalized. John Walters went up there and said, what you're talking about is passing a law that will allow you to export poison to my country. When we talk about poison, exporting poison, what do we export to Canada? Cigarettes. 430,000 people die in the United States every year from ingesting cigarettes. 5 million around the world. So who's exporting the poison here?
Of the 6 million people who could benefit from treatment and need it in the United States today, 60% are dependent on marijuana. Lies. They invited me. I'm sorry.
I wasn't sure who invited him and why he came here yet again. He's been here before.
He needs to shake his head. So how about him shutting down the cocaine that's coming across the border? How about him shutting down the guns? Sometimes you feel like you've stepped into Alice in Wonderland. You've gone through the looking glass.
In fact, more Colombians die from U.S. tobacco than Americans die from Colombian coca products. So what's the drug war really about? Because if you don't want American tobacco in your country, America will go to war in a trade sense with your country.
You have Canada engage in cannabis policy reform and taxing and regulating cannabis, and all the scare stories haven't come true. you have an awfully hard time sustaining your own domestic policies.
What do you think would happen between Canada and the U.S. if Canada were to legalize marijuana? There's been rumors that, they're like, we'll shut down the border.
I don't think so. I've heard that too, but then my question is, do you want LA, in the dark and thirsty? If you do that, then we're not going to ship oil, we're not going to ship water, we're not going to ship electricity. It's not going to happen. We're too important to each other.
The softwood lumber people going to stop doing business? Are the fishing guys going to stop doing business? Are the people who manufacture stuff back and forth across the border going to stop doing business because pot's legal here?
Business interests aren't going to sit still for losing millions of dollars a day because of border wait times simply because Canada takes a different domestic social policy on cannabis.
Yes, business interests. Sometimes they just seem to pop up. And every so often in the most unlikely of places.
We have seen an explosion in prison construction that lags only slightly behind the explosion in incarceration.
There are more people in jail in America now than ever before.
In the United States, it's one of the fastest growing industries.
Some major investment companies at one time described private prisons as one of the best investments you could make.
So you can make more money building prisons than any other type of investment.
They're extraordinarily expensive to build. They're even far more expensive to operate and maintain.
Right now in the United States of America, the biggest growth industry is the privatized prison complex.
Japan, for instance, incarcerates at 38 people per 100,000 population. The United States incarcerates at a rate of 726 people per 100,000 population. In a 20-year period, the prison population in the United States quadrupled.
We have just shy of 5% of the world's population and almost 25% of its prisoners.
Even South Africa, at its worst, didn't have as many prisoners per capita as America has now.
Texas just built 77 prisons in about the last 20 years.
We find state treasuries on the verge of bankruptcy as a result of prison construction.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room. We're almost doubling prison space. Some think there aren't enough prosecutors. We'll hire them, with the largest increase in federal prosecutors in history.
In the late 80s, there were about 5 privately run prisons in the United States. By 2005, that number had reached over 260.
As soon as you've accumulated a certain amount of capital from building prisons, you can start investing that in ensuring job security, ensuring there'll always be more prisoners around to require more prisons.
We have private prisons? What the fuck is that? How did that happen? How can you profit over people going to jail? That's scary. That's a bad, bad sign. Our society is in deep, deep, deep trouble if nobody's looking into that.
Correctional guard unions have become powerful lobbying groups, pushing for longer sentences on less serious crimes. California's has become one of the most powerful in the state. The California Department of Corrections budget rose from $923 million in 1985 to $5.7 billion in 2004. Between 1977 and 1999, overall local and state spending on corrections across the country grew 946%, almost 2.5 times the rate in which spending on education increased. And prisons aren't the only thing money's being spent on.
There are millions of drug tests per year. There's money to be made on that. It's huge.
It started off with people saying, we really need to test people in dangerous occupations. Things like police officers should be tested, pilots in airplanes. Then somebody said, well, our athletes, we should probably test them for drugs too. Then somebody came along and said, well, it's not just the professional athletes. How about the athletes in colleges and high schools? They need to be tested too. Then they thought a little harder and they said, well, suppose we just test everybody that goes out for an extracurricular activity. That should be constitutional because they don't have to do that, you know. So now if you want to join the chess club at school or the French club, you got to pee in a bottle. Now they're pushing to make laws to test all children in school. All the studies show this doesn't have anything to do with whether kids use drugs or not. So it looks to me like this has a lot more to do with the money that's being made for drug testing. Can you imagine how much money will be involved if we can randomly test every child in school?
A lot of these places that have been urine testing have refused to continue to do it because the only thing that these urine tests are finding is marijuana. The other drugs that people take dissipate from their systems fast enough to not be found.
If they smoke a marijuana cigarette, 28 days later, if they pee in a bottle, they're going to show that they've had a drug. But if they use a hard drug, heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, in a long weekend, nobody can tell that they've used that drug. So what does that say to our young people? It says, if you don't want to get caught, don't use the soft drugs, use the hard drugs.
It's not just urine anymore, it's hair and saliva. They'll do blood testing. There's industry there. This is money. They're not doing it for free.
The most profitable industry in the United States is pharmaceutical.
Dollars involved is just staggering.
Could it really be? Has medicine really become that profitable? The fact is it has. In 2005, U.S. prescription drug sales rose 5.4% to $251 billion, and global pharmaceutical sales rose 7% to $602 billion.
Now, why would pharmaceuticals be threatened by a plant? The answer may be as simple as one word: natural. Because a significant amount of research to date has confirmed or suggested that marijuana in its natural state is still the most effective form. Can you imagine a world where you or I wouldn't have to pay for certain medicines?
After dealing with about 10,000 patients over the last 15 years, I would say that over 200 different medical conditions respond favorably to cannabis.
It appears to have benefits that we never ever knew about.
Glaucoma,
epilepsy, muscular dystrophy,
arthritis,
multiple sclerosis,
wasting syndrome,
nausea, chronic pain,
depression, anxiety, hepatitis C, cancer,
chemo,
AIDS patients.
Is there a product out there today that provides as many medical benefits as cannabis?
No.
It remains an unutilized major resource.
The way to riches in the pharmaceutical industry is to have a drug which can be patented.
Cannabis is problematic right from the start because it's a multi-molecule drug.
In 1930, it wasn't possible to patent plants, and that's the reason that pharma never picked up on this, because by synthesizing and owning compounds, that's where the profit motive comes into the pharmaceutical industry.
The patent in the United States lasts for 20 years. Well, you can charge whatever you want at that time, and that's where you make the killing.
There's no money to be made off natural plants. If you can use a natural medicine that you can grow in your own home, which costs pennies to use, you're going to do that.
You need water and dirt. Not only that, you have that plant forever.
Prime motivation behind any drug company is to make money, and as much money as possible.
They're corporations, and corporations, everybody knows that it's like that diffusion of responsibility thing. There's so many people working for corporations that they lose their humanity.
So those are potential customers for these pharmaceutical companies that are not there if they're using a natural plant.
It's unlimited. You grow more, you get more medicine. Pharmaceutical companies don't want you growing your own medicine.
The government supported a small drug company by the name of Unimed to take a synthetic THC, tetrahydrocannabinol, and to put it into capsules to be used as a oral medicine. This became Marinol. This THC in Marinol is exactly the same 21 carbon molecule that's in herbal marijuana.
But it's not the same as medical marijuana. It's not a crude mixture of things, and there's no guarantee that you get the same results.
You can make a synthetic delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol in a test tube. It'll have exactly the same number of atoms and the same arrangement. But how in the test tube can you put the electron spins together, the subatomic quirks and quarks, if you like, of that compound in the same way that a biological enzyme system will put it together? It can't happen.
In the case of a synthetic compound, if it's only an ingredient from the cannabis, they can formulate that as a drug and make a lot more money out of it.
We're confused that if, you keep hearing that there's no scientific proof to medicinal benefits of marijuana, why are there drugs like Marinol on the market?
Why do they even exist?
Well, that's part of this double talk about it. If we take and